Okay, welcome to this tutorial. We're going to show you how to overload the equals method in Java. So the first thing we want to do is we want to write what we're going to do. This is not the steps to do it. This is merely just answering what are we trying to do with the method. In this case, we're going to try and compare one cat to another by overriding the equals method inside the cat class. So that leads us to the next question. What steps are required to make this happen? The steps required are we need to ensure the object coming in is not null. That's the object that we're passing in to compare to the current instance of a cat. We also need to ensure that the object coming in is a cat. We don't want to accidentally pass it, say, a dog or a car or a person, because we can't compare those two to each other. The next step, after we've ensured that those two are set, we cast the incoming object as a cat in the local space inside that method. After that, we test for inequality field by field. The idea is we're trying to prove that they're not equal. If they're not equal, this cat's not equal to the one coming in that we just cast, then we will return a false. Otherwise, if we've gone through all the tests, we'll return a true. So let's go write the code. Off to NetBeans. So I already created a project in NetBeans. I called it override equals. Needed to give it some name. I've created three files, or three classes: cat, dog, and override equals. Override equals, as you can see, has our main method and some code in it. We'll go over that. Dog, I just created a class dog. It has no code other than the constructor, and it really doesn't matter at this point because we're just using dog to throw another object in there for one of our test cases. Then I created cat. I created just three fields and the getters and setters. Nothing super fancy here, just getters and setters. In the override equals, let's walk through our main real quick so we can see what's going to happen. I created four cats. I called them alpha, beta, gamma, and delta, following the Greek alphabet. And I also created a dog. We just named it doggy. Now I set alpha and beta. If you look at how I set them right here, these two right here, these cats are identical in all three of those fields. They all have the same name, the same color, and the same vet. Even the case in the strings is absolutely matched. So the next thing I did was I set gamma, the third cat, to almost exactly the same, except for I set the color of the cat as white. So it's a white fluffy kitty versus a brown fluffy kitty. Notice that I left delta null, and doggy, it's technically created in null. Then I created a printout. Just these two lines just give me a top of a screen. Do they match? So it has a nice printout. And then I've got, I tell you which two we're comparing: alpha versus beta, alpha versus gamma, alpha versus delta, and alpha versus doggy. We could theoretically go through and see if gamma matches doggy and on and on and on, but these four cases give us the idea. Right here, I'm actually calling the equals method inside the cat and then passing in another object. I could have set this to false, and we'll go over that later. But right now, we already know that alpha and beta from up here are exactly the same. That means, theoretically, shouldn't we, if we hit play, get a true, a false, and a false? Well, what happens? What we actually get is all false, because the Java equals method isn't comparing the fields of the object. It's comparing some other back-end code that we won't go into at this point, but and you can go into your book and actually learn more about that. What we want to do is we want to change that equals method so we have more control over it. So what we're going to do is called override it. We're going to go over to cat, and we're going to go ahead and set this up a little better. And first one is you're going to do at and then the word override. all lowercase. Or, sorry, the O is uppercase. My bad. Then public boolean equals, if I can spell it today, we will be set. Capital O for object, then obj, and if all went right, boolean object, and then just to make it simple right now, I'm going to make it say return false. So the reason that this line here is so important that it's written exactly this way is this is the signature of the equals method that Java is already looking for. We can't change object or the word obj. It has to actually say object space obj just like that. So it's very important that you type this case sensitive and exactly as I just put it. This false here, this will be dealt with later, but I needed to throw that in so we could quit airing out while working with it. So let's look at what was our first case. The first step we needed to take was ensure that the object coming in was not null. Well, that's obj. This is the object coming in. We're passing in obj. Now, we're also not sure if it's a cat at this point because in main we could pass it anything. So to do that, you write if obj equals null, return false. Now, why did we do that? Still can't type today. Why did we do that? Well, if the object coming in is null, it can't be equal to the current object that's calling it. So we know that it's automatically false. The next one we needed to check, according to our thing, was ensure that the object coming in is a cat. So what we do is if get class and not equal to obj dot get class, and we could clear this up a little better by using this. I believe we can do that. And then we want this one to return false also. Okay, maybe we can't use this. I can't remember now. I don't think so. Okay, so what we have is, oh, we got an extra bracket. Okay, if the class that the current class is calling it is the same as the class that we're passing in, so it's checking for a cat for a cat. If it's not the same, see, not equals, we'll return a false. Our next step was cast the incoming object as a cat in local space. So let's check for null. Add our code or little commas now. Make sure obj is a cat. Cast the obj as a cat. And so to do that, I like to do it as final. Cat, I should have made it uppercase, but I was in a hurry, equals, we could give it a name. So in this case we'll call it passed cat, as in the one that's being passed in. Passed cat equals, in this case you put it in parentheses, cat, what kind of object it is, obj. See, this is a little different than when you've created a new one. Normally you would you'd done it where after the equals you type the word new and then what kind it is. In this, you put it equals and then then you put parentheses like your parameters and what kind of object it is or what kind of class, and then you tell it what variable you're using to cast it as. So in this case, we're taking object and casting it as a cat. We're saying we are positive that this object coming in that we've labeled obj is actually a cat and not a dog or a car or something else. Okay, so the next step we have is we need to do a field by field comparison. Okay, so check the fields. If and then it's not equal pass cat dot equals and then this dot age comma I'm sorry, this needs to be objects. Past cat dot age okay. So what we got is we've called the objects class and checked the equals, and we're giving it the two parameters. Remember in JUnit we could do assert true or assert false. We're basically asserting that if these two objects do not match based on these two fields that I just highlighted, then return a false. So let me go ahead and copy and paste this code because that'll make our job a lot easier in a second. Just line that back up. Remember, we have other fields in here. We have color and vet. So let's do vet next. We just change age to vet. And then we just change this to color. What we've done there is we've gone through all of those. Now, we could have theoretically had more fields up here. I only put 3. And you don't have to check every field. You need to look at what you're doing and whether or not you really need to make sure all fields are equal to assert that they are the same cat. A good example is we might have had love level. Well, Fluffy the cat might have had a love level with one person that's different than a love level with another person. It's still the same Fluffy the cat. So you got to look at your fields and make your determination on your own what fields constitute being equal. So the last step we had is we needed to return a true if all that's not false. Well, let's change this to true. And we'll clean this up just a little bit. Alright, so let's look at this all together. Let me give you a little more space here. So what we got is we pass in an object. We check to see that that object's not null. Then we check to see if that object is actually the same as the object as a cat. Then we cast that object as a cat. Then we check the various fields of the cat being passed in versus the cat that's calling this method. And if all of that does not fail out, if everything says, hey, I have no reason to object to these matching, we go ahead and return a true. So let's go back to our override method and hit play. As you can see, in this case now, beta and alpha do match. So let's go back to looking at what we're calling when we do this little piece inside a main. We can, let's give it another space. we can create a Boolean. We'll call it Boolean tester, and we'll set it equal to false as a default. Okay. So now we can say tester equals alpha dot equals, and it gives us a little help, and we could say beta, and then we could just print it out real quick. And we'll just give it a something. Tester equals tester. If we hit play real quick, as you see, tester is set to true. What we're doing is we're taking the cat alpha, calling one of its methods, and we're passing in beta. So we're taking one of the cats, passing in the other cat right here in its parameters. It's just like any other method call we've done. The only difference is we've now overwritten one of the default methods. We could change this. Let's give this a copy and a paste. Notice how I've passed in that object. We could try and pass in, I think we can pass in a string, because strings are objects. Don't think that'll err out. You know, it won't, because they are the string class is an object class. So we can pass in a string. Notice how I passed in a string and it says string is not this, the word string is not the same. Well, some people might be tempted to say, well, what if I type alpha? Alpha is the same cat, alpha and alpha. But actually, no, it's not the same, because we passed in a string called alpha versus a cat called alpha. So the last step we need to do is verify that our code meets the requirements. And as you can see from the printouts right here, that when the two cats match, it prints out as true, but when they do not completely match according to our criteria that we have decided on, then it returns a false.